The arrival of the impossible students, Dr. Vextar Moonwing's ethereal form, flickered with nervous energy as she drifted through the corridors of the Galactic Institute of Advanced Sciences. Her translucent body, normally glowing with the calm blue of scholarly contemplation, now pulsed with anxious amber hues. After 3 centuries of teaching advanced quantum mechanics to the galaxy's brightest minds, she had never faced a challenge quite like this. The emergency faculty meeting had ended just hours ago, and the news still felt surreal. The Galactic Education Council had approved the first-ever exchange program with Earth. 3 humans would be arriving at the Institute within the solar cycle, and the entire academic community was in chaos. Vextar paused outside the main lecture hall, watching through the transparent aluminum walls as her colleague, Professor Thistlelack, attempted to calm his advanced stellar engineering class. The Serpentine Naga's usually steady voice carried traces of distress as he addressed the concerned students. "The decision has been made at the highest levels," Thistlelack was saying, his scaled hide shifting from green to yellow with stress. "We must show proper academic courtesy to our new colleagues." A young crystalline from the mineral world of Axios raised one of her geometric appendages. "Professor, is it true that humans can survive in environments that would kill most spacefaring species? That they actually evolved on a world where the very air is poison to many life forms?" "Oxygen is indeed highly reactive," Thistlelack admitted, reluctantly. "And their homeworld's gravity is nearly 3 times that of most civilized planets. But we must not let fear cloud our scientific judgment." Fear. That was exactly what Vextar sensed throughout the station. The humans hadn't even arrived yet, and already the cafeteria staff had reinforced their serving areas. The dormitory supervisors had installed additional security measures, and half the student body had requested transfers to other facilities. Vextar's own research into human capabilities had done little to ease her concerns. Earth was classified as a Class Taui Deathworld, a designation reserved for planets so hostile that most species couldn't even visit them with full environmental suits. The fact that humans had not only survived on such a world, but had actually thrived there was both impressive and terrifying. The soft chime of the arrival dock's alert system echoed through the station's communication array. Vextar felt her photonic matrix fluctuate with anticipation and dread. They were here. The docking bay fell silent as the human transport vessel connected with the station's airlocks. Dr. Kefri, the Institute's headmaster, stood with his full, diplomatic staff, his forearms clasped formally behind his back. His usually confident demeanor seemed strained as he waited for the airlock to cycle. The massive doors slid open with a soft hiss, and 3 figures stepped through. The first human was tall by the standards of most species, though Vextar's database indicated he was actually average for his kind. He wore what appeared to be a modified uniform with numerous pockets and attachments, and his dark eyes swept the assembled crowd with what could only be described as tactical assessment. Everything about his posture spoke of controlled strength and readiness for action. "Captain Jake Torres," he said, extending his hand toward Dr. Kefri in the human greeting gesture. "Thank you for accepting us into your program." The second human was smaller but no less intense. She carried what looked like a portable laboratory in a compact case, and her bright green eyes sparkled with unmistakable curiosity as she took in the alien architecture around them. "Dr. Lily Park?" She introduced herself with a warm smile that revealed her species' omnivorous dental structure. "I specialize in xenobiology, and I have to say this place is even more amazing than the holovid suggested." The third human was the most unusual of the group. His clothes were stained with what appeared to be lubricants and metal filings, and he carried a toolbox that looked like it had been through several wars. When he grinned, it was with the expression of someone who saw every problem as an interesting puzzle waiting to be solved. "Tom Mitchell," he said, "but everyone calls me Wrench. I fix things that are broken, and I break things that need fixing." He winked at the assembled crowd, causing several nervous ripples among the faculty. Dr. Kefri managed to maintain his diplomatic composure, though Vextar noticed his lower arms trembling slightly. "Welcome to the Galactic Institute. We have prepared quarters for you in the International Wing. and your academic schedules have been arranged according to your specializations. As the group moved through the station's corridors, Vextar observed how other students and faculty reacted to the humans' presence. Most pressed themselves against the walls, giving the newcomers as wide a berth as possible. The humans seemed to notice this but showed no offense, instead maintaining their curious and friendly demeanor. The artificial gravity here is really well calibrated, Captain Torres commented as they walked. What type of generator system are you using? Professor Thistleack, who had joined the welcoming party, looked surprised by the technical question. Quantum field manipulation matrices, standard class 7 technology. Impressive, Torres nodded appreciatively. We're still working with rotating sections and gravitational plates on most of our stations. Much less elegant. Dr. Park had stopped to examine a bioluminescent plant display in one of the corridors. These Andromedan ferns are beautiful. The way they've adapted to the artificial light spectrum is fascinating. On Earth, we have similar species that evolved in cave systems. You study cave ecosystems? Asked Dr. Zephyra, a methane-breathing scientist who had maintained her distance but couldn't hide her professional interest. Among other extreme environments, Park replied enthusiastically. Deep ocean thermal vents, Arctic tundra, volcanic regions. Life finds a way to adapt to the most unlikely places. Wrench, meanwhile, had noticed a maintenance panel that was showing amber warning lights. Hey, looks like you've got a power regulation issue in section C7. Want me to take a look at that? The maintenance supervisor, a multi-armed hexapod named Clickter, scuttled forward nervously. That is unnecessary. Our systems are quite advanced. No doubt. Wrench agreed cheerfully. But sometimes a fresh perspective helps. I've dealt with similar fluctuation patterns on our deep space platforms. As they continued toward the residential quarters, Vextar found herself walking alongside Dr. Park. Despite her apprehension, academic curiosity was beginning to override her fear. Dr. Park, she began hesitantly, may I ask about your home environment? Your file indicates you come from a region called the Amazon Basin? Park's face lit up with enthusiasm. One of the most biodiverse regions on Earth. Over 400 billion trees, thousands of species of birds, mammals, reptiles, and insects. The ecosystem is so complex that we're still discovering new species regularly. And this environment is dangerous? Well, there are poisonous plants, venomous snakes, large predators, diseases, parasites. Park listed casually. But it's also incredibly beautiful and full of life. Humans learn to work with the environment rather than against it. Indigenous peoples have lived there sustainably for thousands of years. Vextar's photonic matrix flickered with amazement. The casual way this human discussed what sounded like a nightmare landscape was both disturbing and oddly reassuring. Their conversation was interrupted by an urgent alarm that began blaring throughout the station. Emergency. Lights bathed the corridors in red, and the calm voice of the station's AI began broadcasting in multiple languages. Attention all personnel. We are experiencing a critical malfunction in the primary atmospheric processing system. All non-essential personnel should report to designated safe areas immediately. The alien faculty and students immediately began, following established emergency protocols, moving in orderly groups toward the nearest safety zones. But Vexistar noticed that the humans had stopped moving entirely. Instead, they were looking at each other with expressions she was beginning to recognize as their species' version of professional interest. Atmospheric processing failure, Captain Torres mused, his tactical assessment mode clearly engaged. How catastrophic are we talking about? Dr. Kefri's 4 arms were gesturing in visible distress. The backup system should engage automatically. This is likely just a precautionary alert. As if in response to his words, a second alarm joined the first, and the AI's voice returned with increased urgency. Primary backup systems have failed to initialize. Estimated time to critical atmospheric imbalance, 47 minutes. All personnel must evacuate to emergency shelters. The organized evacuation suddenly became much more frantic. Students and faculty began rushing toward the evacuation tunnels that led to the station's reinforced emergency sections. But the humans remained motionless, and Vextar found herself staying near them, uncertain why. 47 minutes, Wrench said thoughtfully, pulling a scanner device from his toolbox. That's plenty of time to fix an atmospheric processor. The question is, what exactly failed? Tom, we're not supposed to... Dr. Park began, but Torres interrupted her. We're part of this community now, Lily. If there's a problem we can help solve, we should try. Clichter, who had been preparing to evacuate with the others, turned back toward them. His multiple arms were trembling with fear, but his voice carried desperate hope. The central processing core is in section D12, but the radiation levels during a malfunction. No organic being can survive exposure long enough to reach the manual controls. Wrench was already checking his equipment. What kind of radiation? Electromagnetic? Particle bombardment? Thermal? High-energy plasma discharge from the containment fields, Clichter replied. Lethal to any known biological form within 30 seconds of exposure. The humans exchanged glances, and Vextar saw something pass between them that she was beginning to understand was characteristic of their species. It wasn't recklessness or bravado. It was the calm assessment of a problem coupled with an absolute refusal to accept that any problem was unsolvable. 30 seconds isn't long, Torres acknowledged, but it's enough time to reach a control panel if you know exactly what you're doing and you don't hesitate. Jake, the radiation exposure, Park protested, will be significant but survivable, if we're fast and if we take proper precautions, Torres replied. Our species has dealt with radiation exposure before. We recover from it. Wrench was already pulling additional equipment from his surprisingly extensive toolbox. I can rig a basic radiation shield from the maintenance supplies here. Won't stop everything, but it'll buy us more time. The alien maintenance crew watched in amazement as the human began rapidly assembling what appeared to be a makeshift protective device from spare parts and emergency supplies. His hands moved with the confidence of someone who had built similar devices before under pressure, when lives depended on getting it right. This is madness, Dr. Kefri said, though his voice carried more awe than condemnation. The risk is too great. The risk of doing nothing is greater, Torres replied simply. If this station loses life support, everyone dies. If we try and fail, everyone dies. If we try and succeed, everyone lives. The mathematics are pretty clear. The evacuation continued around them. The three humans began their preparations with systematic efficiency. Park used her biological knowledge to calculate radiation exposure limits and recovery protocols. Torres planned the fastest route to the control center and identified the most critical repair procedures. Wrench continued building protective equipment and backup tools. Watching them work, Vextar realized that the galaxy had fundamentally misunderstood what made humans dangerous. It wasn't their ability to survive in hostile environments or their physical resilience, though both were impressive. It was their absolute refusal to accept defeat, their instinctive drive to find solutions where others saw only problems, and their willingness to risk everything to protect others, even others they had just met. As the humans prepared to enter the most dangerous section of the station to save everyone aboard, Vextar understood that her people's fears had been misplaced. The humans weren't the threat. They were the solution to threats nobody else could handle. The real question was whether the rest of the galaxy was ready for what these remarkable beings could accomplish when they set their minds to it. When Deathworlders become heroes. The radiation. Warning sensors screamed their alerts as Captain Torres, Dr. Park, and Wrench approached the sealed entrance to Section D12. The makeshift radiation shields Wrench had constructed from maintenance supplies looked impossibly crude compared to the advanced technology surrounding them, but the humans wore them, with the confidence of people who trusted their own ingenuity over fancy equipment. Vextar floated nearby, her ethereal form pulsing with anxious energy. Against all safety protocols, she had refused to evacuate with the others, compelled to witness what she was beginning to suspect would be either a historic tragedy or a legendary rescue. The containment breach is getting worse, Clichter reported. through the station's communication system, from his position in the emergency command center. Radiation levels are now at 847% of lethal baseline for most species. The automated repair systems can't function in that environment. Torres checked his radiation detector one final time. The device was registering levels that would kill most galactic species within seconds. For humans, it meant they had perhaps 5 minutes before permanent damage, 10 minutes before death. It wasn't much time, but he had worked with worse margins before. "Remember the plan," he said to his companions. "Lily, you monitor the biological system's readouts and guide us to the right repair sequences. Wrench, you focus on the mechanical restoration. I'll handle the manual overrides and coordinate our movements. We get in, we fix what's broken, we get out." Dr. Park's scanner was showing atmospheric composition readings that made her stomach tighten with concern. "The plasma discharge has ionized most of the air in there. We're going to be breathing what amounts to liquid lightning." "Sounds refreshing," Wrench replied with his characteristic grin. "I've always wondered what lightning tasted like." The heavy doors to Section D12 slid open, revealing a corridor filled with crackling energy discharges and the eerie glow of unstable plasma fields. Most sentient beings would have taken one look at the hellish environment and immediately sealed the doors again. The humans walked forward without hesitation. The moment they entered the danger zone, Vextar felt her photonic matrix fluctuate with sympathetic pain. The radiation levels were so intense that even her energy-based physiology was being affected just from proximity. How the humans were continuing to move forward, she couldn't understand. "Radiation's climbing fast," Torres reported through his comm system. "We've got maybe 7 minutes before we need to be out of here." The central atmospheric processing chamber was a cathedral of twisted metal and arcing energy. What had once been elegant alien engineering was now a chaos of sparking conduits and failing containment fields. The main control console was located at the center of the disaster, completely surrounded by lethal energy discharges. "There's our problem," Wrench observed, pointing to a massive containment coil that had twisted out of alignment. "The magnetic field generators are fighting each other instead of working together. Classic cascade failure." Dr. Park was studying her biological readings with growing concern. "The plasma discharge is creating toxic atmospheric compounds. Even if we restore the main system, the air in here will be poisonous for hours." "One problem at a time," Torres said, already moving toward the control console. "Can you reach the manual overrides, Wrench?" "Not from here," Wrench replied, studying the crackling energy barriers between them and the critical systems. "But I can reroute power through the maintenance conduits. Give me 3 minutes to crawl through the service tunnels." Without waiting for confirmation, the human maintenance expert dropped to his knees and opened an access panel that led into the station's mechanical systems. The space was barely large enough for a human to squeeze through, and it led directly under the most dangerous part of the damaged equipment. Vextar watched in amazement as Wrench disappeared into what amounted to a radiation-filled death trap, carrying nothing but his tools and an apparently unshakable confidence that he could fix anything that was broken. 2 minutes gone," Torres reported, his voice steady despite the fact that his radiation exposure was already reaching levels that would require extensive medical treatment. "How are we doing, Lily?" Dr. Park was working at a secondary console, her fingers flying over controls designed for beings with entirely different anatomical structures. "I'm rerouting the atmospheric scrubbers to compensate for the toxic buildup. But Jake, the radiation exposure calculations, even if we succeed, we're going to need serious medical attention." "We'll worry about that when everyone else is safe," Torres replied. "Right now, focus on the task." From somewhere deep in the service tunnels, Wrench's voice crackled through the comm system. "Found the primary power coupling. The problem is, worse than we thought, somebody really didn't want this system to be repaired easily." "What do you mean?" Torres asked, still working to bring the manual overrides online. "This failure wasn't random," Wrench replied, his voice strained from working in the cramped, irradiated space. "Someone sabotaged this system. The containment coils were deliberately misaligned and the safety interlocks were bypassed. This was an attack. The implications hit all 3 humans simultaneously. This wasn't just a technical malfunction, they We're trying to fix. Someone had deliberately tried to destroy the station and that someone might still be aboard. Can you still repair it? Dr. Park asked, her medical training making her acutely aware of how much radiation they were all absorbing. With each passing second, I can fix it, Wrench confirmed. But I need to physically realign the containment coils. That means getting right into the heart of the plasma discharge. Even with the shields, that's going to be unpleasant. Torres made a command decision. Do it. We didn't come this far to fail now. Through the crackling energy fields, Vextar watched as the human engineer emerged from the service tunnel directly beneath the most dangerous part of the damaged system. The radiation levels there were so intense that her sensors couldn't even measure them accurately. No known species should have been able to survive in that environment for more than a few seconds. Wrench not only survived, he began working, using tools that looked impossibly primitive compared to the alien technology around him. The human began the delicate process of realigning the massive containment coils. Each adjustment sent fresh waves of deadly energy cascading through the chamber, but he continued working with the focused determination of someone who simply refused to accept defeat. Almost there, he reported through gritted teeth. Jake, when I give the signal, activate the primary restart sequence. Lily, be ready to compensate for the atmospheric shock when the system comes back online. Standing by, both his companions replied. Vextar realized she was witnessing something unprecedented in galactic history. 3 members of a species that most civilized worlds considered barbaric Deathworlders were risking their lives to save a station full of beings who had been afraid to even meet them. They weren't doing it for glory or reward. They were doing it because it was the right thing to do. Now, Wrench shouted. Torres activated the restart sequence, and the station's atmospheric processing system roared back to life with a sound like thunder. The chaotic energy discharges suddenly organized themselves into purposeful flows. The twisted metal straightened itself back into proper alignment, and the toxic atmosphere began to clear as the scrubbers resumed their vital work. The 3 humans staggered out of Section D12, their makeshift radiation shield smoking and their faces pale from exposure. But they were alive, and they had succeeded. As the emergency alarms finally fell silent, Vextar heard something she had never experienced before in her 3 centuries of life. The sound of an entire space station full of beings cheering for their heroes. Dr. Kefri was the first to reach them, his forearms extended in the traditional gesture of highest respect. You have saved us all. How can we possibly repay such a debt? Captain Torres, swaying slightly from radiation poisoning but still standing, managed a tired smile. You can start by helping us figure out who sabotaged your station. This wasn't an accident, and whoever did it might try again. As medical teams rushed to treat the humans' radiation exposure, and security teams began investigating the sabotage, Vextar found herself floating beside Dr. Park in the medical bay. Why did you do it? She asked. You barely knew us. You had no obligation to risk your lives for strangers. Park looked up from the medical scanner that was treating her radiation exposure, and her expression was one of genuine confusion. Why wouldn't we help? You were in danger. We had the skills to fix the problem. That's what people do for each other, isn't it? Vextar realized that this was the fundamental difference between humans and most other galactic species. For humans, helping others in danger wasn't a difficult moral choice or a calculated risk assessment. It was simply what you did when you had the ability to help. Over the following days, as the humans recovered from their radiation exposure, something remarkable happened throughout the Galactic Institute. The fear and suspicion that had greeted their arrival transformed into respect and admiration. Students who had previously avoided them now sought them out as study partners and friends. The investigation into the sabotage revealed that a radical faction opposed to interspecies cooperation had planted the device, intending to make it appear that the humans had caused the disaster. Instead, the humans had not only prevented the catastrophe but had exposed the real threat to galactic peace. Professor Thistlelack approached Vextar as she watched the humans conducting an impromptu engineering seminar for interested students from a dozen different species. I have been thinking about what we witnessed, the Naga said thoughtfully. We were wrong about what made them dangerous. How so? Vextar asked. We thought they were dangerous because they were strong. Because They could survive in hostile environments because they were warriors from a death world, Thistleak explained. But that's not what makes them truly formidable. Vextar watched as Wrench demonstrated how to build an emergency shelter using nothing but classroom supplies, while Captain Torres explained tactical decision-making under pressure, and Dr. Park shared techniques for treating radiation exposure using common medical supplies. They're dangerous because they make everyone around them better, she realized. They don't conquer through force, they conquer through inspiration. They show us what we're capable of when we refuse to give up, when we work together, when we believe that any problem can be solved. As the term continued, the humans became the most popular instructors and study partners at the Institute, not because they were feared, but because they brought out the best in everyone they worked with. They taught their alien classmates that failure was just another word for haven't found the solution yet, that impossible simply meant nobody has tried the right approach, and that the most dangerous thing in the galaxy wasn't any weapon or natural disaster. It was the loss of hope. The three humans from Earth had brought something to the Galactic Institute that was more valuable than any technology or knowledge. They had brought the unshakable human conviction that there was no problem too big, no challenge too dangerous, and no situation too hopeless to overcome. As Vextar watched her students, human and alien alike, working together on projects that would have been considered impossible just months before, she realized that the galaxy would never be the same. The humans hadn't just joined the galactic community. They had taught the galaxy how to be human.